Imagine being one of the biggest stars in the world and having every door in Hollywood open for you. Picture yourself making movie after movie and working with some of the greatest directors and actors of your time. Now imagine that through all of that fame and all of those film sets and all of those premiere nights, you kept a secret list in your heart of the movies that truly moved you. This is the story of Elvis Presley and the films he loved more than any others. Before we dive into video, please subscribe to our channel. The king of rock and roll was not just a music legend. He was a movie fanatic. From his earliest days in Tupelo, Mississippi to his final years at Graceland, Elvis Aaron Presley had a passion for cinema that rivaled his love for music. He would rent out entire movie theaters after midnight, just so he and his friends could watch films without being mobbed by fans. He had a screening room built at Graceland where he would watch movies over and over again. Some films he watched dozens of times until he knew every line by heart. But what movies did Elvis actually love? What films made the king himself feel something special? For years, this remained a mystery wrapped in Hollywood legend. His close friends would hint at it. His Memphis Mafia buddies would share stories. But never did we get the full picture until private conversations and personal notes revealed his true top 10 favorites. Let me take you on a journey through the cinematic tastes of Elvis Presley. These are not just random picks. Each film on this list tells us something about who Elvis really was beneath the jumpsuits and the screaming fans and the gold records. These movies show us his soul. Number 10, Wuthering Heights. Elvis loved romance and he loved drama, and the 1939 version of Wuthering Heights had both in spades. Laurence Olivier and Merle Oberon starred in this gothic tale of obsessive love and revenge on the English moors. Elvis would watch this film late at night, and he connected deeply with the tortured passion of Heathcliff. Here was a man from humble origins who loved beyond reason and who could never quite fit into the world around him. Does that sound familiar? Elvis saw himself in Heathcliff. Both were outsiders who clawed their way up from poverty. Both loved with an intensity that frightened people. Both were misunderstood by the society they lived in. When Heathcliff cried out for Catherine, Elvis felt every word. He understood what it meant to want something so badly that it consumed you. He knew about love that society said was wrong or impossible. The black and white cinematography spoke to Elvis too. He appreciated the artistry of classic Hollywood. The sweeping shots of the moors, the dramatic lighting on faces twisted with emotion. This was filmmaking as art, and Elvis respected that. He may have made fun beach movies and light musicals, but he knew what real cinema looked like. Number 9, Rebel Without a Cause. James Dean was gone too soon, and Elvis knew it. When Rebel Without a Cause came out in 1955, Elvis was just beginning his own rise to fame. He watched James Dean on that screen and saw a kindred spirit. Here was another young man who represented something dangerous and new to America. Another rebel who made parents nervous and teenagers scream. Elvis related to Jim Stark and his struggle to be understood. The famous scene where Jim screams at his parents that they are tearing him apart hit Elvis hard every time he watched it. He had his own complicated relationship with authority and expectations. His own parents had dreams for him that did not always match his own wild ambitions. But more than that, Elvis admired James Dean as a performer. Dean was raw and real and vulnerable on screen in ways that male actors rarely were at that time. He cried, he broke down, he showed weakness and confusion. Elvis wanted to do that kind of acting. He wanted roles that would let him show his range and depth. Sadly, Hollywood mostly gave him singing cowboys and race car drivers instead. Elvis watched Rebel Without a Cause over and over, studying Dean and trying to understand what made his performance so magnetic. He would quote lines from the movie. He would imitate Dean sometimes just for fun. In many ways, Elvis saw what his own film career could have been if the studios had taken him seriously as an actor. Number 8. The Philadelphia Story Now. Here was a different side of Elvis. The Philadelphia Story from 1940 was sophisticated comedy at its finest. Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant and James Stewart created magic in this tale of high society and second chances and finding real love. Elvis adored this movie for its wit and charm and beautiful people saying beautiful things. He loved Katharine Hepburn, loved her strength and intelligence, and the way she could go toe-to-toe with any man on screen. Elvis appreciated strong women despite what some people thought. His mother Gladys was the strongest person he ever knew, and he was drawn to women who had that same inner steel. Cary Grant represented everything. Elvis thought a movie star should be elegant, charming, able to wear a tuxedo like it was a second skin. Elvis studied the way Grant moved and talked. He tried to bring some of that smoothness into his own screen presence. Watch Elvis in some of his later films, and you can see hints of Cary Grant in his gestures and his timing. The Philadelphia Story also represented a world Elvis could never quite reach. The old money society, the East Coast aristocracy, the insider jokes and references. Elvis was always the outsider, even when he had more money than most of those people ever would. This film let him peek into that world and imagine himself belonging there. Number 7. Patton George C. Scott won the Oscar for his portrayal of General George Patton and then refused to accept it. Elvis loved that. Loved the whole movie and loved the defiant act of rejecting Hollywood glory. Patton was a warrior and a poet, and a man who lived by his own code even when it destroyed him. Elvis watched this film again and again, especially in his later years. The opening scene alone was worth the price of admission. General Patton standing in front of that enormous American flag, delivering a speech that was profane and patriotic and absolutely riveting. Elvis knew something about commanding an audience. He knew about walking out on stage and making thousands of people unable to look away. Patton had that same power. Elvis also connected with Patton as a man out of time. Patton believed he belonged in ancient battles with swords and horses. He was born for war, but born in an age where war was becoming mechanical and political. Elvis sometimes felt the same way about music. He was a 1950s revolutionary trying to survive in the 1970s. The world had changed around him, and he was not always sure where he fit anymore. The tragedy of Patton spoke to Elvis too. Here was a brilliant man who could not stay out of his own way, who said the wrong things and made enemies, and ultimately was discarded by the same army he served so well. Elvis understood that kind of self-destruction. He struggled with it himself. Number 6. The Godfather. When The Godfather came out in 1972, Elvis saw it and immediately recognized a masterpiece. Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, the sweeping family saga, the violence and loyalty and betrayal. This was everything cinema could be. Elvis watched The Godfather so many times he could recite entire scenes from memory. He loved the family dynamics. The way Don Corleone commanded respect from his sons. The way Michael transformed from war hero to cold-blooded boss. Elvis had his own Memphis Mafia and his own sense of family loyalty that went beyond blood. He understood the bonds that tied the Corleones together and the terrible prices they paid for power. The scene where Brando played with the cat while discussing murder was genius too. Elvis. The contrast between gentle gestures and deadly business. Elvis himself was a walking contrast. The sweet southern boy who said yes sir and no sir, but who also had a temper and a wild streak. He understood living with contradictions. Elvis also appreciated The Godfather as a film that took its time. The slow build, the careful character development, the way Coppola let scenes breathe and trusted his audience to pay attention. This was the opposite of the fast, cheap movies Elvis had been stuck making for years. This was art, and Elvis wished desperately that he had been given the chance to be in something this good. Number 5. A Streetcar Named Desire. Marlon Brando again. Elvis could not get enough of Brando. A Streetcar Named Desire from 1951 was raw and sexual and emotionally devastating. Brando as Stanley Kowalski was a force of nature. Vivien Leigh as Blanche Dubois was fragile and desperate and heartbreaking. Together they created fire on screen. Elvis was mesmerized by Brando in this film. The torn t-shirt, the animal magnetism, the way Stanley prowled around that tiny apartment like a caged tiger. This was masculine power without polish or apology. Elvis had his own raw sexuality that made him a star, but he was always interested in how other performers used theirs. The Tennessee Williams dialogue was poetry. Elvis loved language, and he loved the way Williams wrote about desire and loneliness and the lies we tell ourselves. Blanche Dubois, depending on the kindness of strangers, became one of Elvis' favorite lines. He would say it sometimes late at night when he was in a certain mood. But deeper than that, Elvis connected with both main characters. He saw himself in Stanley sometimes, the working-class kid with more strength than sense, the guy who did not understand fancy manners or subtle games. But he also saw himself in Blanche, the fading star clinging to past glory, the person who needed illusion to survive because reality was too harsh. Number 4. King Creole. Now we come to Elvis' own work. Of all the movies he made, King Creole from 1958 was his favorite. It was the one film where he felt like a real actor, where the script was good and the director Michael Curtis was a legend and the story had real stakes and emotion. Elvis played a young man named Danny Fisher who gets involved with gangsters in New Orleans. He sang, but the songs were part of the story, not just inserted randomly. He got to show anger and fear and vulnerability. He had dramatic scenes with serious actors like Walter Matthau and Carolyn Jones. This was what he wanted his career to be. King Creole showed what Elvis could have done as an actor if Hollywood had let him. Critics agreed. They praised his performance. They said he had real talent beyond the music. But then Elvis went into the army, and when he came back, Colonel Parker steered him towards safe lightweight films that made money but wasted his potential. Elvis would watch King Creole and feel both pride and sadness. Pride because he knew he was good in it. Sadness because it represented a road not taken. What if he had held out for better scripts? What if he had fought harder to be taken seriously? But Elvis was loyal to the Colonel, and he made the movies he was told to make, even as a part of him died a little with each silly soundtrack album. Number 3. To Kill a Mockingbird, Gregory Peck. As Atticus Finch was heroism without flash or ego, Elvis loved To Kill a Mockingbird from the moment he first saw it. The black and white photography that looked like memory itself, the small southern town that reminded him of Tupelo, the story of justice and racism, and growing up, Elvis was a complicated figure when it came to race. He grew up poor in the South. He learned music from black artists and loved gospel and blues. He faced criticism from both sides. Some said he stole from black musicians. Others said he was too friendly with integration. The truth was messy, like most truth is. To Kill a Mockingbird spoke to that messiness. It showed good people in a racist system. It showed children learning hard lessons about the world. Atticus Finch stood up for what was right, even when it cost him. Elvis admired that. He wanted to be that kind of man, even if he did not always know how. The relationship between Atticus and his children moved Elvis deeply. The gentle parenting, the teaching through example, the protection of innocence for as long as possible. Elvis thought about his own father Vernon and their complex relationship. He thought about what kind of father he wanted to be to Lisa Marie. Boo Radley, hiding in the shadows watching over the children, also resonated with Elvis. By the late 1960s, Elvis was increasingly isolated, trapped in Graceland or hotel rooms, unable to walk down a street or go to a restaurant like a normal person. He felt like Boo sometimes, cut off from the world but still caring about it, still wanting to protect the innocent even if he could only do it from the shadows. Number 2. The Searchers' John Wayne was Elvis' favorite cowboy star, and The Searchers from 1956 was John Ford at his finest. This was not a simple Western. This was a dark, complex film about obsession and racism and the thin line between hero and madman. John Wayne played Ethan Edwards and a man consumed by hatred and the need for revenge. A man who spent years searching for his kidnapped niece and might kill her when he found her because she had lived with Indians. Elvis watched The Searchers constantly. The Monument Valley landscapes were burned into his brain. The way Ford used the doorway as a frame at the beginning and end of the film. The ambiguous ending where Ethan brought Debbie home, but could not enter that home himself. He was forever outside, forever alone, forever searching. Ethan Edwards was a difficult character to love, but Elvis understood him, understood being driven by something you could not control, understood having darkness inside that frightened you, understood being a protector who was also a threat. Elvis had his own demons and his own obsessions, even if they were different from Ethan. The Searchers was also about America itself, the violence that built the country, the racism that stained it, the lonely men who did terrible things and called it necessary. Elvis was patriotic but not blind. He loved America but he saw its flaws. This film captured that complicated love. Number 1. Citizen Kane. At the top of Elvis' list was the film most critics call the greatest ever made, Citizen Kane from 1941. Orson Welles created a masterpiece about power and loneliness and the corrupting nature of success, about a man who gained the whole world but lost his soul, about how the things we want most can destroy us. Elvis saw himself in Charles Foster Kane. Both were poor boys who became richer than kings. Both built empires and filled mansions with possessions trying to fill a hole inside that could not be filled. Both were adored by millions but truly known by almost no one. Both ended up isolated and longing for something simple they had lost. Rosebud, the dying word that drove the whole film. The mystery that reporters tried to solve. In the end, it was a sled. A memory of childhood innocence before everything got complicated. Elvis had his own Rosebud moments. Times he wished he was back in Tupelo with his mama and no fame or fortune or expectations. Just a boy who liked to sing. The way Wells showed Kane aging and hardening broke Elvis' heart every time. The young, idealistic newspaper owner becoming the bitter old man rattling around Xanadu. Elvis feared that trajectory for himself. Feared becoming a parody or a relic. Feared dying alone despite being surrounded by people. But Elvis also loved Citizen Kane as pure filmmaking. The deep focus cinematography. The non-linear storytelling. The dramatic lighting and camera angles. The way Wells broke rules and invented new techniques. This was an artist refusing to accept limitations. This was someone who came into an established industry and changed it forever. That was what Elvis had done with music. He broke the rules. He mixed genres that were supposed to stay separate. He moved his body in ways that shocked people. He changed everything. Citizen Kane reminded him that breaking rules and taking risks was how art moved forward. So there you have it. Elvis Presley top 10 favorite films. From gothic romance to westerns. From sophisticated comedy to stark drama. From his own best work to the greatest film ever made. These movies show us a man with depth and taste and real intelligence. Hollywood never gave Elvis the chance to show what he could really do as an actor. They put him in beach parties and race cars and gave him silly songs to sing. But Elvis knew what good acting looked like. He studied the masters. He watched Brando and Dean and Olivier and learned from them. In his private screening room at Graceland, Elvis lived the movie career he never got to have. He watched films that challenged him and moved him and made him think. He appreciated art even when the art he was making himself had been reduced to product. These 10 films were his teachers and his companions and his escape. When the world became too much, Elvis could disappear into Citizen Kane or The Godfather. He could watch Atticus Finch stand up for justice or Ethan Edwards ride through Monument Valley. He could see what cinema could be at its best. And maybe that is the saddest part of the Elvis story. He knew what greatness looked like. He had it in his music. He could have had it in his films. But forces beyond his control and choices he made kept him from reaching that potential on screen. So he watched others do it and dreamed about what might have been. Elvis left us in 1977, but his love for these films remains. They show us the private Elvis, the thoughtful Elvis, the Elvis who was so much more than the jumpsuit and the Vegas shows and the tabloid headlines. They show us the king as a film student and a fan, and a man who understood that movies at their best could touch the human heart in ways nothing else could. These were Elvis Presley's favorite movies. They were windows into his soul, and now you know them too.